Well, good morning to you, good morning. This is looking like a failed experiment. Here, as Le Ferrand, Monday the 20th of March 2023. I'm pointing the camera at the sky, and this is before the street lights go on, and the camera just isn't catching what my Mark I eyeballs are catching. An absolutely clear sky. And at the moment I'm pointing the camera at some of you will call it the Big Dipper, some people will call it Ursa Major, you know, the Great Bear, with the two pointer stars that point to the north, the pole star over there. It's one of the things that I really love here. We do not suffer with the light pollution that many people suffer with in towns. And with my bare eyes, I can see stars. And some of you who live in rural areas are saying, what on earth is he talking about? Of course you can see stars. You want to live near London or Paris. You can't see the stars because of the light pollution, the atmospheric muck. But there we are. What's today? Well, today is the displaced feast of St Joseph. And I've just seen a shooting star. How about that? Yes, the displaced feast of St Joseph. We'll talk about that later. Well, look at that. If you leave it for a few hours, it gets light. And we can't see any stars, but, well, we can see the world in all its beauty. Trees and fields and bushes and things. Yes, today, the Solemnity of St Joseph. I sort of think that we don't celebrate St Joseph enough. We don't actually know that much about him. And some will say rightly so, because Joseph isn't the central character in the Bible or in the Gospels. You know, Joseph, as I suspect you all know, was the man who was betrothed to Mary, the mother of Jesus. And yeah, he gets a few mentions. You know, we know he was visited by an angel who told him that the fact that Mary was with child wasn't something to be ashamed and frightened about. We know how Mary was protected and guarded by Joseph when he took them into Egypt to escape the horrors of how Herod thought he would stop a new king being born in Bethlehem. Pheasant at the side of the road. And yeah, we hear about how Joseph and Mary took the young Jesus to Jerusalem in a caravan, and you know, it's quite a famous story. When they left Jerusalem, they travelling back to Nazareth, and sort of looked round, and you know, I thought Jesus was with you. No, I thought Jesus was with you. Oh, goodness gracious, where's Jesus? So they went back to Jerusalem and found him teaching in the temple. So, yeah, Joseph, not the central character, but an important character in the whole story. And what can we learn from him? Well, in the grand scheme of things, we might say not that much. We learn from Christ, we learn from the Bible, we learn from the Word of God. But we can learn from Joseph an acceptance of his role in the whole thing. And we can put ourselves sort of close to what Joseph must have been feeling and thinking, because in our lives, if it hasn't happened to us, we certainly know people who have discovered that their girlfriend is with child, knowing that he wasn't the father. And we can stop and think about how we would deal with that today, or how our friends have dealt with it. And Joseph dealt with it in the way that God wanted him to. He guarded and protected Mary and the young Jesus. We can only speculate about the childhood of Jesus as the adopted child of the village. Everyone thinks of Joseph as a carpenter. From what little I know of ancient languages, carpenter is not wrong, but it would seem that perhaps the Greek or the Aramaic would describe him as a sort of maker, not necessarily just in wood, but a useful chap to have about. And we can think about how it has been for many of us to either be a child getting under the feet of someone working in a workshop, or perhaps being the carpenter, the builder, working in a workshop with a child getting under your feet. We don't know what happened in those circumstances. We can only apply our own experience to that. So yeah, today, Solemnity of St Joseph. We can spend a little bit of time thinking about him. Now, the project today, oh dear, what are we doing today? We're doing lots of little bits of everything. I've got some interesting messing about to do. I've got some wiring and some grouting and planting things. We're going to start by, as is often the way on a Monday morning, trundling down to Isère-sur-Creuse on this slightly misty morning. The weather's supposed to be quite pleasant today. We're going to do some shopping, or faire mes courses. Well, as shopping expeditions go, that was more interesting than I normally enjoy. Nice weather and being early gives you a chance to just enjoy life. And I got to the shop somewhat before it opened, and an elderly gentleman came and stood next to me. Now, something that men my size notice here is locals tend to be short compared to me. And this gentleman was a little short man. He might have only been about 5 foot tall. And I wouldn't like to say how old, but closer to 80 than 60. And he said good morning, and he said lovely day today. Well, what he actually said was Boton, 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 and he waved his hands in the general direction of the sun. And then he proceeded to talk to me like I was an old friend. And it would have been incredibly interesting if I understood what he was saying. In this part of France, there's a lot of people who don't really speak French. They speak a mixture of Berrichon and various words of local patois. Anyway, this gentleman proceeded to tell me how last year wasn't so good for him. He had had various operations, one to fix a problem he had with his shoulder, and one to fix a problem he had with his little finger, and one to fix a problem he had with one of his hips. And he explained that he used to be un garde chasse, a gamekeeper. Now, if I followed the story, he told me how the law has changed in France, and that law is quite a complicated business sometimes. There's big laws, you know, thou shalt not murder. That's a pretty big universal law in most of the world. But then there's little regulations. And one of the regulations that has changed recently is the nature of shot for shotguns. Some of you will know all about shotguns and how shotgun cartridges have different size shot in them. You know, one size for little birds and one size for rabbits and so on and so forth. But the law has changed, and you're not allowed to use lead shot. And the clever people that sell such things, they've come up with modern replacements for lead shot. And this old gentleman told me that it's just no good. It doesn't do the job that old-fashioned lead shot used to do. And he laughed, and he said it's not a problem for him because he's an old man and he's got enough shot, powder, cartridges, caps to make enough shot for him to use for the rest of his life. That was very interesting. I missed probably half the conversation, but that was fun. Anyway, we wished each other good luck, bon chance, and went about our business of buying the things we needed. But I didn't get very far because I was stopped in my tracks by an old lady. Now, this isn't an unusual thing for me because I'm 6 foot tall and the locals really aren't. You know, we're going to pass some locals here on the left, and we'll see that they're not very big people. We're going to cross, yes. Yeah, they're not very big people, so in supermarkets it's not unusual for me to be stopped by old ladies who want me to get things off top shelves for them. Which, yeah, you know, why not? It's a pleasure to help other people. But no, this old lady didn't want me to get something from the top shelf. She wanted me to work out for her which windscreen wipers would fit her car. Supermarkets here tend to carry a lot of different stuff, you know, tins of beans and meat and washing up liquid, all the usual things that you find in every supermarket everywhere in the world. But there's sections that deal with other things, and yes, there is a car spare section, and she needed windscreen wipers for her car, and she was struggling to work out which ones would do her car. And she handed me the registration documents for the vehicle. Incidentally, it was a Renault Megane Scenic, but quite an old one. Yeah, and I have to admit, going down the list, I said to her, I think the best thing to do is to take the old windscreen wiper off and to bring it in and compare it. So I failed with that one. What I didn't know is Renault Meganes come in all sorts of shapes and sizes, and yes, they have windscreen wipers for the front windscreen, and some versions have a wiper for the back which is a different length, and according to the year of manufacture and the particular model, so I had to apologise and explain that I'm not an expert. And then I had to try and remember what it was that I'd gone in the shop for. Yeah. When I get home, I'll discover whether I got all of the right things or not. When I get home, what I will do is make a cup of tea. Just over the brow of this hill, in the 90km/h speed limit, there's Azay-le-Ferron. Because it's at the bottom of the hill, about the first thing on this road is actually the sewage treatment works. One of the advantages of living in a small town is we're on mains drainage. That is something that when you decide that you've seen all of these beautiful trees and you've seen the lovely countryside and the fantastic weather, when you decide you're going to buy a house here, there are many small towns that do not have mains drainage systems. You have to have what's lovingly referred to as a fosse septique, which is a good solution, but it involves thinking and work and things like that. Whereas if you live in a town like Azay-le-Ferron, we have got mains drains. took a lot of the worry out of this place.